Welcome back to Smart Currency Tube. Today, we're diving into a topic that affects everyone at some point in their financial journey: budgeting. While budgeting is often hailed as the golden rule for managing money, it can have some paradoxical effects that might surprise you. The purpose of this episode is to explore how rigid budgeting can lead to financial burnout, a phenomenon that many people experience but few talk about. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by strict financial plans that leave you feeling deprived? You're not alone. Understanding the psychological impact of budgeting is crucial for developing healthy spending habits. When we impose rigid limits on ourselves, it can create a sense of restriction that ultimately leads to frustration and, in some cases, reckless spending as a form of rebellion. In this episode, we'll discuss how a more flexible approach to budgeting can help you maintain control over your finances without sacrificing your enjoyment of life. We'll share relatable insights and practical tips that resonate with anyone seeking to improve their personal finance game. Whether you're a budgeting novice or a seasoned pro, our goal is to help you find a balance that works for you. So, if you're ready to rethink your budgeting strategy and learn how to avoid the pitfalls of financial burnout, stick around. Let's embark on this journey together and discover a healthier way to manage our money. Let's talk about the rigid budgeting trap and how it can create a sense of deprivation that many of us experience. When we set strict budgets, we often find ourselves feeling restricted and frustrated. Imagine meticulously tracking every dollar spent, only to realize that you can't enjoy that spontaneous dinner out or buy that book you've been eyeing. This constant monitoring can lead to a mindset where every purchase feels like a guilty pleasure rather than a well-deserved treat. Common budgeting methods like the 50-30-20 rule or zero-based budgeting can sometimes be too rigid for our everyday lives. While these methods provide structure, they can also create an environment where any deviation feels like failure. For instance, if you allocate a specific amount for entertainment and go over it just once, it can lead to feelings of guilt and anxiety, making you more likely to restrict yourself even further in the future. The psychological effects of deprivation are significant. When we feel deprived, our brains can trigger a scarcity mindset, leading to impulsive spending as a way to compensate for the lack of enjoyment. This can create a vicious cycle where we oscillate between strict adherence to our budget and impulsive splurges, ultimately undermining our financial goals. In this section, we'll explore how to break free from the rigid budgeting trap and find a more balanced approach that allows for flexibility and enjoyment in our financial lives. Budgeting burnout is a real phenomenon that many people face, and it can have serious consequences on both our finances and our mental well-being. So, what exactly is budgeting burnout? It refers to the exhaustion and frustration that arises from the constant pressure of tracking every expense and adhering to strict financial plans. This burnout can manifest in various ways, such as feeling overwhelmed by financial decisions, experiencing anxiety about spending, or even giving up on budgeting altogether. The emotional toll of constantly monitoring finances can be significant. Imagine checking your budget every day, scrutinizing every purchase, and feeling guilty for any little indulgence. Over time, this relentless focus can lead to stress, anxiety, and even resentment towards money management. Instead of feeling empowered by your budgeting efforts, you may find yourself feeling trapped and defeated. Relatable anecdotes highlight the prevalence of budgeting fatigue. For instance, a recent survey found that nearly 60% of individuals who follow strict budgets reported feeling overwhelmed and burned out. Many shared stories of how they started with enthusiasm, only to find themselves exhausted and reverting to old spending habits. One viewer might recall a time when they meticulously tracked every coffee purchase, only to realize they were missing out on social gatherings with friends. Next, we'll delve deeper into the concept of budgeting burnout, exploring its causes and consequences, and discussing how to recognize and combat this fatigue for a healthier relationship with money. Let's dive into the overspending paradox and how strict budgets can ironically lead to overspending. It might seem counterintuitive, but when we impose rigid financial limits on ourselves, we often create a cycle of deprivation that can trigger impulsive spending. When we feel restricted for too long, it's only natural to crave a release, and that's where the overspending begins. For example, Imagine someone who has been diligently sticking to a tight budget for weeks. They've cut back on dining out, skipped that new outfit, and avoided any unnecessary purchases. Eventually, the pressure builds up, and they might find themselves splurging on a lavish dinner or an expensive gadget just to feel a sense of freedom. This impulsive spending can feel like a reward for their previous restraint, but it often leads to guilt and financial regret. Emotional spending plays a significant role in this context. When we adhere to strict budgets, we may inadvertently associate spending with emotional relief. After a tough week of sticking to the plan, a person might justify a shopping spree as a way to cope with stress or celebrate a small victory. This emotional connection can create a dangerous cycle where the temporary high of spending overshadows the long-term consequences on their finances. Lastly, we'll explore how to break this cycle and find a healthier balance between enjoying life and maintaining financial responsibility, ultimately helping you avoid the overspending paradox. We're also going to explore how to find balance in budgeting by creating a flexible and sustainable approach that allows for spontaneity and enjoyment. The traditional view of budgeting often emphasizes strict limits, but a flexible budget can help you maintain control over your finances while still allowing room for life's little pleasures. One effective strategy is to allocate a specific portion of your budget for fun spending. This could be a fun fund, where you set aside a small amount each month for spontaneous activities, whether it's dining out, attending a concert, or treating yourself to a new book. By designating this money up front, you can enjoy these experiences guilt-free, knowing they're part of your financial plan. Another practical tip is to embrace the concept of budgeting for joy. This means identifying the things that truly bring you happiness and prioritizing them in your budget. If travel is your passion, for example, consider adjusting your spending in other areas to make room for that getaway. It's essential to regularly reassess your budgeting methods. Life changes, and so should your budget. Take time to evaluate what's working and what isn't. Are you feeling restricted? If so, it might be time to adjust your approach. By incorporating these strategies, you can create a budgeting plan that not only supports your financial goals, but also enhances your overall well-being. Let's embrace a more balanced approach to budgeting that allows for both responsibility and enjoyment. As we wrap up today's discussion, let's recap the key points we've covered about the paradox of rigid budgeting. We've explored how strict financial plans can lead to feelings of deprivation, ultimately resulting in budgeting burnout and even overspending. It's clear that while budgeting is essential for financial health, an overly rigid approach can create a cycle of stress and impulsive spending that undermines our goals. Finding a balanced approach to budgeting is crucial. By allowing for flexibility and incorporating fun spending into our financial plans, we can enjoy life while still maintaining control over our finances. Remember, budgeting doesn't have to be a chore. It can be a tool that empowers you to make choices that align with your values and priorities. We hope you found these insights helpful and relatable. If you're looking for more personal finance tips and strategies, we encourage you to subscribe to our channel. By hitting that like button, you help us reach more listeners who might benefit from this information. And don't forget to share this episode with friends and family who are navigating their own budgeting journeys. Thank you for joining us today. We're excited to continue exploring personal finance topics with you, so stay tuned for our next episode. Together, let's create a healthier relationship with money and find the balance that works for us all.